Hi, welcome to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of the juicy stuff we women experience that makes this life journey truly amazing. You know, the nitty-gritty, the love, the loss, the falling down and rising up, the getting lost and finding our way again. To our hearts, our happiness, and to the awareness that we can and do move mountains. Thank you for joining. Welcome everyone to this episode of the She Moves Mountains podcast. Today I am so excited to have as a guest Emerald GreenForest, who is just a light in my life. I've known her for I'm thinking almost 10 years now. So I'm just super thrilled to have her on the show. And I'd love to just share a little bit about Emerald. She is the founder and lead visionary of Creative Age Consulting Group, the Wealthy Life Mentor. Emerald is an internationally known speaker, transformation artist, and Be the Change Movement to Watch award winner, which I'd like to ask a little bit more about, and one of America's premier experts. She's the executive producer and hostess of the Apple Top 100 ranked Men on Purpose podcast and the Apple Top 75 ranked Wickedly Smart Women podcast, which is just an amazing podcast. I'm so excited about this. And she is hired to consult with high-achieving leaders who are called to be the vanguard of this creative age. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you here, Emerald.
Oh, Kamala, I am delighted and honored and graced to be able to be on your platform and on your stage. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all the information that you have to share, because it's so important right now, especially for the women who are moving mountains. And there was one piece that you had mentioned when we initially spoke about what it means to be called and the challenges that are encountered by people when they're called, and you know, where's the gap between the calling and the cash, if you will. And it's really important because, you know, if we're moving mountains, which we are as leaders and way showers, you know, we need to be supported. So that's one of the things I definitely want to speak with you about. And actually, we could just start with that. If you just speak a little bit about that, and also how, well, part of the challenges, I'm sure, were the things that helped you, or I'm hearing forced, but that's not the right word, challenged you to move your mountains. So let's start with what does it mean to be called?
Beautiful. Well, I love that. So in the experience that I had, and also in the experience that I help a lot of other people with, that I've seen, I really want to define the calling. And so I think the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about my own experience with the calling.
Please.
And kind of contextualize it for people, put it into story form. So back in 2001 was when, I think the awakening started probably in 1995 when I had my son by emergency C-section. And it was like a big traumatic thing. The experience of having him, he was early. And that was the beginning for me of the calling process. It was kind of the beginning for me of the waking up to, oh, the world that I'm in is really wacky, right? And at that time I was in the real estate business, and I had, the typical quote unquote American dream life, right? We had the White House, we had the fence, the chain link fence around the backyard. We had the dog, we had 2 cars, and single garage, and the little baby, and just all the things. And there, with his birth, and certainly with the trauma of his birth, which he was an emergency C-section 6 weeks early, it just started to awaken things and open things in me. And probably about a year into being a mom, that's a rite of passage. Coming into motherhood is a rite of passage, but our culture, our society, at least at the time that I had that happen, a lot of the structures for a really psychic rite of passage had been stripped away from our societal matrix and replaced with TV programming and, all the advertising and all the things that are not really spiritually anchored.
Right.
Yeah. So about a year after his birth is, in retrospect, I'm looking back now and I see how that was like the beginning. But then there was like more and more cracking that was happening over time. And by the time he was 3, we experienced a significant trauma, another significant trauma with him that was, just an amazingly difficult thing to navigate as a parent. And that was like the second breaking open for me. That was when the cracks started to like become fissures, right?
Right.
And there is this deep programming to say, keep it all together, keep it all looking good, keep it all like, we don't want anyone to know, don't ask for help, all of those things. But that fissure was so big that I just, started speaking. I started speaking and telling people what had happened, and recognized that in the speaking of it, I was becoming more empowered, right? I was becoming more empowered, and I was also becoming more of a pariah in the old structure that wanted to keep my voice silent. So the spiritual awakening itself that I can really point to and say that's when it happened was when he was about five or almost 6, and I had an experience where my husband at the time and I were in a, the I don't know zone.
Right.
And I had committed in my mind under the old structure that I was, married for life, right? Even though there was a lot of challenges, lot of challenges in that relationship. And then that big thing started to, like, the fissure became the crevasse, right? So we went from the crack to the fissure to the crevasse. And all at the same time that this is all breaking away, there is this more that is asking to be expressed out of me. And the question of, is this all there is, was like the first question. But then the next question that came through from a friend of mine was, what is it that you want? And I had spent my whole life in a state of not knowing that I was actually even allowed to have my own wants. Right. So when she asked that power question, that just, everything blew open at that point, right? Everything blew open.
Right. The explosions.
The explosion happened.
Right.
And then from there, first it was my own journey. Like I had to go on my own journey. So the journey was calling me. From there, the journey was calling me. And every part of my old life became more and more and more repressive to this journey that was calling me. And then ultimately, as I said yes to the journey, as I said yes to experiencing and exploring parts of myself that I did not even know existed, right? I went from being a real estate developer to all of a sudden I left. At the end of my career, I had been building with 2 partners, 51 single family houses, 56 apartments, and an office building, all through the trauma period of what had happened with my son. And then it all just broke, and I broke, and I became clear I couldn't stay in that any longer. And I told my partner, I'm going to go be a crystal healer. And I had never even had one. So I didn't even know what I was talking about.
Wow.
But the calling was there. The calling was there. And so for me, it's not just, this little journey that I'm describing, but it's also, I've come to understand now that the calling is your own heart's desire to contribute its authentic gifts in response to the prayers from the people around the planet for whom you were uniquely designed to serve. Yes. And that's my definition of the calling.
That is beautiful. And it fits so perfectly with, we may call it different things, but it's like, this is the idea of moving mountains, is overcoming the things that really break us open. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting chills. That was so amazing. Thank you.
You're
because
welcome.
I knew you, or I met you after your journey had begun with the healing and the crystals and leaving the real estate behind. So
yeah. Well, and also I think that it's important to just underscore here that the calling evolves over time.
Yes.
So there's the initial calling, and then there's, we answered that calling, but beyond that calling, there's the next calling and the next calling and the next calling. And with each level of calling, also there are challenges. So the first challenge was leaving my real estate career, following divorcing my first husband with a 6-year-old, that was challenging, right? Yes. And I think the core thing that I want to talk about that I've experienced for challenge has been from that moment of I can't say no to the calling. I must respond to that. And the part of me that felt challenged was, how am I going to create money to be able to extract myself from this old world and say yes to this calling? And so right there is where the challenge, that was my challenge. So some people, their challenge is weight or relationships or, whatever. Everybody has their own challenge to the calling. And it literally, the challenge to the calling, whatever yours is, whether it's relationships or money or, whatever yours is, the challenge to the calling, and I'm getting this right now, is actually it's like the emery board or it's the sandpaper that is shining your gemstone. Like every time you hit that challenge, it's just shining your gemstone more and more and more and more. And the work is to answer the calling in the face of this sandpaper that is rubbing your face every minute, right?
Right. Yeah. That reminds me of the Rumi quote that I'm not sure I'm going to get it, but if every irritation rubs you the wrong way, how will your mirror be polished?
Yeah.
How are you able to answer the calling if you're backing away from the emery board or the polishing? So,
exactly. And so for me, it was money. And I see that for a lot of people who are called in the spiritual realm. There's a lot of challenges with not just money, but I believe that, we are really being called now as a collective. Those of us who are conscious and who are awake and who would call ourselves healers or artists or teachers of spiritual principles, we're being called to go, just get over the money piece. And now let's talk about wealth. There's a big difference vibrationally between money and wealth. And we are now being called to actualize a massive redistribution of wealth from an old system that's no longer functioning and showing itself to us on a moment-by-moment basis that it's no longer functioning, into the hands and hearts and stewardship of those of us who are holding a vision for a whole new reality that will require those resources. And so now the work that I am engaged in actively is, as I have have untangled my own challenge with money, now I'm up against, that part of the mountain where like you have to climb under it to get over it kind of thing. Like that part of the mountain where it's about the wealth piece, right? It's about how do we create wealthy life for ourselves, which includes money and not just money. Like we untangle ourselves from the money matrix such that wealth in a monetary form, as well as in all the other areas, like wealth for me is the sum total of all the resources that we have available to us, that we are able to actively welcome it and engage it and receive it and steward it and contribute with it.
Yes, that's so beautiful. It's like the wealth is well-being all the way around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I there's 5 areas where that I have identified are the resources that we have: time, health, our intellect and intuitive resources, right? Energy exchange, which is the money piece. I call that energy exchange, and fun with our family, friends, and fellows on the path. And if you think about that, it spells out thief. Because we are often stealing from one to the other. Oh, I'll just steal a little time for fun from my friends and family and put it into working to exchange money.
Yes.
Or I'll steal a little from my health to put it, like the money piece gets amplified and all the rest get stolen from, right?
Wow.
So we have, I'm using that mnemonic to help people to actualize in their own mind the realization that they are stealing from themselves. And wealth, true wealth, is wellness across all 5 areas.
Awesome. I love that. Like, I had never thought of that before, but it's really good. Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I'm wondering, you had said something about the challenges of answering your calling. Do you feel like that you answered that with the
earlier? I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that each of us has our own sandpaper.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And for spiritual people, for me at least, it was money. And I see that a lot in the community, the spiritual community.
I think that's huge. And you had also mentioned something about the challenge of claiming your worth and your wealth when you're accustomed to being ruled by other people's opinions or their thoughts of how things are meant to be. So I'm wondering if you'd share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, certainly when I was in the real estate industry, I mean, when you have always been, when your financial flow has been controlled or set by others, right? You don't recognize necessarily what your own value is, because it's kind of like, it's like a fish being in water. They don't know they're in water. They're just like, that's the environment that they've been in. And so for most people, we have come through a period of time where we were in, again, more like the industrial age, and even in a lot of old industrial age mindset and thinking transferred into the information age, but we're now at the dawning of the creative age. And so when you are in the creative age, it becomes incumbent upon you to claim your own value rather than have your value identified by some outside force or source. And, the education system is in process of transforming like everything else, but up until now has been, a place where, our value is given to us in the form of an A or a B or a C or a D or an F, right?
Right.
But our essential value, our true value, our authentic value, the gift that we came to deliver may, and in most cases doesn't, fit into this industrial model that its only purpose is to take your time and your labor to output some kind of product, right?
Right.
So the old industrial model essentially is valuing time and production capacity, labor capacity. It does not value innovation, intuition, creativity, unless it serves the machine, essentially,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so what happens when we exit the machine, when we wake up ourselves, when we have our calling come to us, we don't know, we're now a fish out of water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't necessarily understand our own value, and we definitely have a challenge often in calculating what the value is of what we have as our unique, authentic, divine contribution to someone else. As generally speaking, our divine, unique contribution is super easy for us.
Yes.
Like, it's super easy for us. Like, I can sit here and talk to you all day. Super easy for me, right?
Right.
How do you value that? I don't know how to value that, certainly under the old industrial model. Well, is what one sentence that I'm saying, is it making a difference in somebody's life? Is it waking them up? Is it causing them to be called forth? Is it inspiring them to stop stealing from themselves? What is the value of that to them? And so it becomes an interesting rite of passage, shall I say, to step into a place where you say, I'm going to create my life like a work of art. And as a result of that, I'm going to look at my life. What is it that I actually require to be having all the time, time wealth, health wealth, intuitive and intellectual wealth, monetary, energy exchange wealth, and fun wealth? What do I require? And to get really self-responsible, to get really clear in your self-care, to get really willing to experiment and let go of all the programming and conditioning that just doesn't serve you anymore.
Right. And that's so important for the vast majority of my listeners are spiritually inclined and healers, and on those paths. And the idea of doing things so differently. And this is really important. So if I have the sense there's something more that you want to say about.
Yeah, I do. I actually want to share with you, because I just published my brand new book, Be Heard by Millions and Live Your Destiny.
Ooh, and I just got chills.
Yeah, and it just, this is the proof copy here.
Oh,
that's
beautiful.
what the cover looks like. Be Heard by Millions and Live Your Destiny.
Yeah.
And I published it, and it immediately hit #1 in business consulting under new releases. So that was pretty exciting for me. And I actually support people not only to create their life like it's a work of art and find their unique contribution and their gift and become, create a wealthy life by design, but specifically I work with people to convert their wisdom into wealth, meaning that they're going to likely become like me, a speaker, a podcaster, somebody who's got a message, somebody who's here to share their message with a lot of people. And that's not going to be for everyone. There are people who are in your audience who are going to be perfectly happy to put their hands on people for the rest of their lives as massage therapists.
Yes.
But then there are those who are going to be called and they're like, okay, I love putting my hands on people as a massage therapist, but there's really something more I know I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Yes, exactly.
I'm called to do something more. So I have in here, I do have a little graphic called the Messenger Mountain of Visibility. And it talks about this money piece. So I want to talk about the money piece a little bit.
Yeah, please.
What happens, because I want to give some immediately actionable things for people to think about who are listening. What happens when we awaken, we're now on Messenger Mountain, right? We woke up and look, there's the mountain in front of us, right? So often we will start in the pool of professionals. So those are maybe the readers, the healers, the massage therapists, the teachers that are like all in the pool of professionals. And when we start in the pool of professionals, we don't know how to value ourselves. So we look at everyone else,
right,
and we say to ourselves, well, they're charging $75 for a reading. I'll charge $75 for a reading. Or, let me be the Walmart of readers, right? Let me charge $34,
right,
because there's no understanding of math and calculating the value and calculating how much you need to have the business operational and all of those things. So that's what happens when we're in the pool of professionals, is we're just kind of looking around and saying, oh, that's what you're charging? Well, that's what I'll charge.
Right.
Then we emerge, some of us emerge to become experts. And often the experts are the ones who are teaching things to the pool of professionals, helping them to improve their profession or certifying them. And that's where we start to value our body of work and begin to understand that it's not time for money, it's results for money. It's a different kind of exchange. And then we go to the next, and these people down here in pool of professionals, they're in the under six figures to maybe six figures, maybe 150,000. Right. When we get to the experts, they can go 6 to 7 figures. And then we have the leaping leaders, and the leaping leaders are the ones who are literally rising up to be the leader in the industry, right? The thought leaders. And those are the ones who are generating multiple streams of income. They're generating multiple offerings for people. They've created a business structure that probably has a team of 15, 20, 30, 50 people. So what they charge not only has to account for their own value, but also has to account for this entire structure that needs to be fueled by the money, right? Yes. And then at the very top of the mountain, where the star is, that's where the stars land. And those are the people who are here to leave a legacy of light. And those are people like Oprah or Deepak Chopra or Marianne Williamson or Tony Robbins, who are like the stars in the firmament. And at that level, it's like an unlimited amount of money that is not only required, but available. And the legacy actually can live on. So just like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, 100 years after he wrote it, there's still an organization. There's a legacy that was left that continues to grow and flourish as a result of the amount of money that is able to be acquired and magnetized to that organization. So that's just a little map of kind of like the money stuff for people to maybe have oh, wow, an awakening.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Gives me chills.
Nice.
So is the book out now, or?
It is. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available on Kindle. Right now, it's 99 cents on Kindle.
Okay.
It will probably be going up on Kindle in a little bit, but it won't be more than $4.99 on Kindle at any point in time. And the paperback is available for $14.99. So it's available right now and moving forward from here on Amazon. And we love ratings and reviews.
Yes.
Already have plenty of 5-star ratings, but we like more ratings and reviews. And it's a great roadmap of how I actually built a business after divorcing my first husband. I ended up in the speaking and leadership space, expert space. I built a business where I was raising my son from home as a single mom and wearing my yoga pants or my pajamas, and ended up generating almost $2 million from home over the course of 8 years while I was still baking brownies for the football team. So that's the roadmap for that. That's in that book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That'll be in the show notes.
Nice.
Because I didn't have that before, so that's really wonderful.
I just pressed publish last week. That's why.
Yay.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Well, I'd like to let listeners know how they can be in contact with you. I know that you have a quiz, so I want to share that first, and then we'll have your other various websites, or your websites.
Yeah, we're just going to give them the quiz. I mean, anybody who wants the book can go to the book. for sure. And there's actually two quizzes, because in the book there's a quiz around speaking. So there's a speaker archetype quiz that kind of is a companion to the book. So those of you who are interested in getting the book Be Heard by Millions and Live Your Destiny, there's a little quiz right in there for that. But I'd really like people to go to my wealth readiness quiz. And the wealth readiness quiz can be found at quiz.wealthylifementor.com, quiz.wealthylifementor.com. And then the only other thing I'd like people to do is, if they're interested in podcasts, certainly tune into the Wickedly Smart Women podcast. Mala was a guest on my show. I have a lot of amazing magical women who are on. They're both magical and wickedly smart. So yeah, tune into that, and definitely rate and review that right now as well. We're now downloading in 31 countries, and we're in the top 600 globally for reach under business. I think it's under business or entrepreneurship for that show. So
wonderful. And most of the listeners here are women. We have a few men, but mostly women. So yeah, definitely tune into the Wickedly Smart Women. I think it's just so fun, and you have great guests who are wickedly smart. And even that name is just, it's just such a kick. So before we end, I do ask my guests one question about, if you were able to whisper in the ear of a younger Emerald, what would you like to say to her?
Yeah, so if I were to whisper in the ear of a younger Emerald, I would tell her to give herself a break, to just give herself a break, and love and care and appreciate her unique gifts. Love and care for herself, and appreciate her unique gifts. I just give herself a break, because for most of my life I've just driven myself unnecessarily now in retrospect.
Right.
I mean, you can't say that because everything that I did got me to where I am, right?
Yeah,
but if there was one gift I could give her, it would be give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Every now and then. And and that doesn't mean you need to break your arm to do it.
Good point. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Emerald. And thank you so much for being on the show today. I just so enjoyed being with you all the time, but this was really special, and I thank you.
Thank you
our
for
listeners.
having me.
Yeah. I hope that you will rate and review this episode, and give rave notices for Emerald, and also check out her other podcasts. So again, love and blessings to all of you, and thank you, Emerald. Until next time, folks, take care. Blessings. You've been listening to the She Moves Mountains podcast, coming to you every week. If you're a woman who wants to move mountains in your own life, please make sure to subscribe or follow this podcast. And if you've laughed or gotten teary or smiled knowingly, thinking, oh yeah, that's me too, please go ahead and rate the episode with 5 stars. It'll be a feel-good thing to do. Thanks a bunch. Lots of love and blessings to you. This is Kamala signing off. Until next week. Take care.